Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to visit this beautiful country. So my talk will be on new approaches that are emerging, therapeutic approaches emerging from the structural studies of HCM4. Let me start. It doesn't work. Maybe it's the other one. No, mine. No, this is mine. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. So, this is the sinoatrial node function in cardiac, and the automatic beating of heart rate is related to the sinoatrial pacemaker cells, which are endowed with this current that is called was called the Fanny current upon discovery, that is starting the diastolic depolarization that drive the next action potential. And the Fanny current IF is also one of the sites of the regulation by isoprenaline acetylcholine of the heart rate, because it is directly regulated by the concentration of cyclic AMP. So the channels, the IF current has very peculiar features. The first one is that it's activated in hyperpolarization, and the other one is this direct modulation of bicyclic AMP that is shifting the activation curve of the channel to the right, allowing more current at the given voltage. And another feature is this selectivity of the channel that is permeating potassium and sodium, as you can see from the reversal potential, which is neither potassium or sodium. And the selectivity ratio is about 2:1, potassium over sodium. And another very unique feature is the very small single channel conductance. So all these properties are mirrored by the HCN channels, which are the molecular constituents of IF current. They were discovered in 1998, and there are 4 subtypes in humans. They are forming tetramers. They belong to the KV family with 4 monomers forming the pore, the conducting pore. And each monomer has 6 transmembrane domains that contains the voltage sensor, and in the cytosol, the cyclic nucleotide binding domain. Another property is that they are blocked by ivabradine, which is an open pore blocker used in the clinics. So the structure was first published by McKinnon of HCN1 in 2017, and this is the dimer for simplicity, showing that the pore is surrounded by the voltage sensor domain in this non-swap mode, and that the cytosolic part contains the C linker that connects the pore to the cyclic nucleotide binding domain with the cyclic AMP pocket. And in this structure, of course, the pore is closed. This is a cryo-EM structure solved in the absence of voltage, of course. So we have later on obtained the structure of HCM4, and the surprise was that of the 3 structures that we obtained, 2 were showing an open pore conformation, and 1 was showing a closed pore conformation, as you can see from the size of the pore radius. And the closed pore has this hydrophobic amino acids pointing inside the cavity, in particular this tyrosine and isoleucine, and there is this glutamine at the end, which obstruct the passage of water and ions, while this is removed in the open pore conformation. Why did we get an open pore? Well, it depended on the purification condition that we adopted. And I can answer question if you are interested. So the closed pore of HCN channels has this typical parallel arrangement, which was observed already in HCN1, of the three transmembrane domain, the voltage sensor domain, and the two pore domains, which is in our structure somehow stabilized by this non-protein density that we assign to lipids that we found in the closed pore, and they are really keeping the parallel arrangement of these three important transmembrane domains. In the open pore structure, on the contrary, we found no lipids, as I mentioned, because of the purification procedures, probably. And so the absence of lipids goes together with the fact that we lose this parallel arrangement of the three helices. In particular, S4 that detaches from S5, and the S5, the end part of S5 can lift above the plane of the three transmembrane domain and allows a rotation of S6. And this rotation of S6, as I mentioned, is rotating these hydrophobic side chains slightly out of the cavity, allowing permeation. So permeation was confirmed by a molecular dynamic simulation performed at TU Darmstadt in Germany. And as you can see already from this snapshot, you see that the glutamine are blocking, preventing water and ions permeation from the cytosolic part, and this is the hydrophobic plug that I was mentioning, tyrosine and isoleucine. While in the open pore, the glutamine are far away, and we saw permeation of water and ions. And this is a simulation performed in the presence of the two ions that are conducted by HCN, potassium and sodium. And as you can see, we have two binding sites, and the permeation is a knock-on permeation in which the entry of the second ion displaces the first ion, which preferentially stays at this carbonyl plane that's the cysteine residue. So the permeation, of course, according to this soft knock mechanism in which water also molecules permeate with, and water molecules, they also contribute to creating the binding sites for the ion. And the interesting finding was that the same carbonyl plane is able to bind a potassium but also a sodium ion, which have clearly different dimensions. So we wonder how was this possible, and by analyzing data and this simulation, we realized that the entry of a potassium is displacing the distance between the carbonyl at the plane of the binding site, and which is not occurring with sodium. Sodium can enter without distorting the filter, while potassium entry generates this distortion, which means that the filter is indeed quite dynamic in HCN channels, at least at this position. So another interesting information that we got is that while we see sodium permeating in the presence of potassium, we never saw sodium permeating by itself. So we never observed a second sodium ion entering the filter when the first one was present, only potassium. So this is basically precluding sodium permeation of HCN channels when sodium is the only permeant ion. And this is known because this was described already in 82 by Dario Di Francesco, that was showing that if you remove potassium from the extracellular solution, you lose the current, even though the sodium driving force is very strong. And now we know that by measuring potential mean forces, that one of the possible reasons is that there is a strong energy barrier for the entry of the second ion in general, and even more when the second ion is a sodium. So this is the landscape, the free energy landscape along the pathway permeation of potassium, sodium, or in the presence of both ions. And this transition between 2 and 5 indicates the transition where the second ion enters into the filter. And shown here is the barrier, the energy barrier, which already, when potassium alone is permeating, is very high, 20 kilojoule per mole. For comparison, in KCSA, the prototype potassium channel, this barrier is 4 times less, is 4 or 5 kilojoule per mole. When we have the simulation of sodium only, this barrier becomes extremely high, 40 kilojoule per mole. Basically, sodium is a blocker and does not allow the second sodium ion to enter into the, because this barrier is very, very high. But if you look at the situation when potassium and sodium are permeating, this transition becomes extremely small, like which is shown in red. It's 4 or 5 kilo. Again, it goes back to the amount of a typical conducting potassium channel. So the reason for not permeating of sodium alone probably is in these energy barriers, and therefore only if a potassium ion enters, sodium can permeate. So this introduction is just to show you that our open pore is really a good open pore because it reproduces all the features of HCN channels and IF current. The low permeability, the low conductance, which is probably related to the high barriers, and the mixed conductivity. So with this open pore, we then investigated other properties, important properties of HCN, like the block by ivabradine. Ivabradine is the only drug on the market which is targeting HCN channels, and is a bradycardic agent because it reduces, by blocking IF current, is reducing heart rate and is used in angina, in heart failure, in several in clinics. And we first had the evidence that ivabradine was interact with our open pore protein by using thermal shift assay. When we introduced ivabradine in complex, well, when we added ivabradine to our purified protein, we noticed that there was a stabilization of the T melting temperature of our protein, which is shifted a few degrees to the right. And this stabilization occurs, we know that occurs when we obtain binding with other known binders of HCN, like for instance cyclic MP, but there is no stabilization when we add a known binder like CTMP. So with this protein in complex with ivabradine, we went to the cryo, and we tried to obtain the structure, and we indeed already saw, without imposing any symmetry, that there was a non-protein density inside the pore, which was nonetheless not so high resolution. So we decided to impose a symmetry to increase the resolution, and this is the improvement that we had in the density and in the modeling of ivabradine in this density. Without symmetry and with C4 symmetry, we could fit almost all the molecule, the ivabradine molecule. So now we know the interaction sites of ivabradine in the pore, which mostly are 3. They are these 2 hydrophobic amino acids that I was mentioning before, tyrosine and isoleucine. And then we also identified a probable interaction with the cysteine, which in HCN is the last amino acid is the first amino acid of the selectivity filter. This is a peculiarity of HCN, that they have a cysteine instead of the usual threonine of potassium channels. And we tested them. Well, we didn't have to test the role of these 2 hydrophobic amino acids. It was previously shown that neutralization into alanine of the 2 or reduction of the hydrophobicity is indeed reducing the affinity of ivabradine many orders of times. And so it was not a surprise to find that they are very important for the interaction with ivabradine. While as for the cysteine, we were uncertain because the cysteine, we thought it was an hydrophobic interaction, but then cysteine can also establish polar interactions. So we tested this by substituting cysteine with the serine, which is clearly a polar interaction providing amino acid. And we saw no difference in the amount of block with the mutant, but we saw a difference that was in the kinetics of blocking, which becomes twice as slow, and which means that somehow this hydrophobicity created by cysteine is indeed important for entering ivabradine and for ivabradine to find the right position in a short amount of time, which could be one of the reasons why the potassium channels are not blocked by ivabradine. Probably they are, but the kinetics is so slow that it's considering not a blocker, to be a blocker for potassium channels. So the other thing that we did was a MD simulation showing that I didn't mention that ivabradine has this tertiary ammonium, which is protonated in the structure. And we observed that somehow this positive charge and the positive charge ion in the filter, they keep a constant distance, as if the tertiary ammonium charge is basically repelling and do not allow impermeation of the ion into the cavity. So this could